put your little hand in mine.
Okay, quarantiners, rise and shine. And don't forget your mask, because there's COVID out there today.
There's COVID out there every day. What is this, New Zealand?
But the big question on everybody's lips.
Masked lips.
Will Oregon stop hoarding its vaccine and start vaccinating more people? Or will Phil predict another 6 months of uncertainty and confusion?
That's right, Woodchuck Chuckers. It's Groundhog Day! Hey, hi. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dan Haggerty. Now, don't tell me you don't remember me, because I sure as heck fire remember you. Welcome to the story. All the ways to communicate with us at the bottom of your screen. Use the hashtag HeyDan. You can reach out to us by email as well at thestory@kgw.com. If you feel like Bill Murray and Groundhog Day a little bit, I don't think anybody could blame you. I mean, we still get a lot of the same questions from you every single night because the answers have been changing every single night. Many of them have been about the vaccine, like this one from Tim. He tweeted, "Hey Dan, Dr. Fauci and the CDC are saying we should forego the second shot for now and concentrate on getting one shot into everyone as soon as possible. Can you verify that Oregon will shift to this policy?" Now, just to be clear here, everyone is still supposed to get that second dose, no matter what. But Tim is talking about providers only giving out half of their vaccines in order to make sure that everyone has that second dose waiting for them. But Dr. Fauci and the White House, they sent out these new guidelines saying that they shouldn't be sitting on those extra doses, not that many of them. In Oregon, we want to know what they're doing. So Pat Doris tried to get this answer for us yesterday, but got the runaround a little bit. Considering it's Groundhog Day, let's try it again. Pat, what do we know?
Well, Dan, it is very confusing because in the beginning, there were organizations, and in fact, I think the state of Oregon was telling people, hold back half the vaccine that you get, so you'll make sure that you've got enough for the second dose, because they were not confident at all. And in fact, as early or as recent as 11 days ago, the head of the OHA, who's coordinating all this, said that on camera at a Zoom news conference. We expect vaccinators to hold back half. But in fact, that's not happening. We checked in at the Oregon Convention Center where they have this mass vaccination thing going on. They're not doing that. They're not, saying, oh, Dan, you got a shot, so one goes in your arm and one dose goes in the freezer. It's not happening. Instead, they're trying to project out 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm not exactly clear on how they're doing that, but they say they're not holding anything back, which would be the appropriate thing. That's what Fauci is saying, that you need to get as many doses into as many people as possible, and when you start to come around after 3 weeks, and now we've been going 6 weeks, so it'd be like, a lot of those people on the second dose get all of the vaccine first, and if there's leftover, you keep going for first doses on people, and you just keep going and going and going.
Forgive me if I'm a little confused here, but haven't they been telling us since the very beginning that when you got a shot, they set your extra dose aside, or were we mishearing them? I'm confused.
Yeah, they've not been getting A+ awards for straight communication. I think, and we're still trying to get them to let us in behind the scenes to show us exactly how they're doing this, how they're accounting for each person and making sure that there's a second shot available. I think literally there maybe was a time where they were setting doses aside. Now they say they're just ordering the second one, and it comes like 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, depending on which first shot you got.
Got it, I think. All right,
but there's still something like 200,000 on the shelf. It's crazy.
Right.
Sorry, Dan. Didn't mean to talk over you.
No, you know what? Any time, because you got the info, not me, and I want to learn as much as I can. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Now, let's turn to our big story tonight, redistricting. That means redrawing the lines of the political districts that represent us depending on where you live. I know, stop. Put your phone down. A bunch of people just went, oh my God, how boring is that? It's not. I mean, it is, but it's not supposed to be. It's a really important civics lesson. It's affecting every single person you know, you, your family, anybody that lives around here, and your voice in government. So it is important, and it is something you should care about. Now, here's how it works, or really how it's supposed to work anyway. See, every 10 years, we take the census, right? And the federal government, they count how many people live in Oregon, and they track where people actually live in the state. state. So, for example, more people likely moved to Portland in the last decade than, say, one of our rural communities. Then the feds give that data to the legislature. A committee of lawmakers use that data they get from the feds to redraw these three maps: the state House district, the state Senate districts, and the federal congressional districts. They all have to be equal in population to each other. Okay, does that make sense so far? So there's this set number of state legislative districts, though, so lawmakers can only kind of move the boundary lines on that map. They're not going to add or subtract districts from the entire state. But they might move more districts into, let's say, the Portland area because more people live there. And that could take away from rural areas where less people live. And this could end up affecting whether you're represented by a Democrat or by a Republican. Now, it's a little different for the congressional districts because Oregon is actually expected to get a new seat in Congress. This hasn't happened since 1982. That's because so many people have moved here in the past 10 years compared to other states that are actually going to be losing a seat in Congress. This is a look now at Oregon's 5 congressional districts as they sit right now. Lawmakers will have to fit a 6th one in there somehow in the state, while again making sure they all stay equal in population. So, I know it's not too complicated, a little bit complicated, but not too complicated. All I have to do is, redraw a couple of maps, right? No, not exactly. It's 2021, and nothing is simple anymore. See, first off, the census data is delayed, so lawmakers won't be able to get their hands on it until after the deadline to redraw the lines. Now, second of all, I don't know if any of you have noticed this, but politics are a little bit heated right now. And this process is all about politics. I talked to Dave Wasserman, a redistricting expert, who has some predictions on how Oregon could add the new congressional seat.
Well, Oregon's in a very unique position because it's gaining a seat for the first time in a long time, and Democrats have pretty solid control of the state compared to previous decades. And at the same time, Democrats are bottled up in Oregon, in Portland and the inner suburbs. And so it actually would have been possible for Republicans to draw a map, if they were in control, in which 4 out of Oregon's 6 districts would have gone for President Trump in 2016 because they could simply draw a fence essentially around Portland and Eugene. But assuming Democrats want to draw the 6th seat in their favor, they're going to have to get creative. And they may need to stretch a number of districts from Portland outwards. I don't think they'll try to eliminate the only Republican seat in the state, but Democrats are going to try to win 5. And to do so, they may need to draw a district that extends from some neighborhoods in Portland all the way to Idaho.
Now, the way that was kind of described would make Republicans feel nervous, considering that, in their opinion, this should be something that is done for the best of the state, to represent what the state is, which is a mixture of blue and red. But when you look at the representation, I think a lot of Republicans feel that it is lopsided, and it is lopsided in a way that is already drawn unfair in their, when it comes to their representation, and they're hearing now Democrats want to push that lead even further down the line.
This is the age-old question: is when politicians are in charge of choosing their own voters instead of voters choosing their politicians, where does this arms race end? And in a number of states where Republicans have control, there's going to be a lot of pressure coming down from the National Republican Party to maximize their advantage so as to erase Democrats' narrow majority in the House. Keep in mind, House Democrats only have a majority of 222 seats right now, which is 4 over the number of seats you need for control. So even tiny changes to district boundaries could tip the House either way. And Oregon's Democrats are going to be under pressure to not unilaterally disarm. They're going to be under pressure to draw seats that are very advantageous for Democrats. Now, keep in mind, there are 2 districts in Oregon, the 4th and the 5th district, that have been tenuous for Democrats in the past few years. So it's not just a matter of Democrats drawing a new district that favors them. It's also a matter of shoring up Pete DeFazio's seat and Kurt Schrader's seat.
Okay. There's another little wrinkle in this whole process. Remember how I said that the census results are delayed? Well, what that means is lawmakers might not actually have enough time to redraw those maps at all. And the job will then fall to our newly elected Secretary of State, Shemia Fagan, also a Democrat like our legislative majority. Here's what she told me during the campaign, though, about how she would handle that job if it was her responsibility.
If I'm involved in redistricting, I will be outsourcing that to an independent commission that meets our diversity and equity goals to make sure that everyone in Oregon is represented, and which is what's failed in California when they did their independent redistricting. They've had it not meet their diversity and representation goals. So I, as a Secretary of State, even as a Democrat, I won't be drawing those lines. I will be using an independent commission model, but one that's based in equity.
Okay, so no matter who ends up in charge, this process will take a while, but we'll keep you posted. Oregon has always been divided into different political districts, but people haven't always been represented fairly. So how did we get here? Let's go back to 1857, when Oregon's Constitution was written. It declared the legislature would be apportioned among the several counties according to the number of white population in each. Why only white people? Well, Oregon was founded on pretty racist principles, like not even allowing black people to live in the state. So that meant anyone who wasn't white didn't get political representation. Oregon also tried to divide its legislative seats up by county, but this didn't really work because some counties like Multnomah and Marion had way more people in them, but less representation than rural counties. In 1952, voters passed a constitutional amendment to try and fix some of these problems. It got rid of the whites-only language to include all races, and it gave more populous counties more seats in the legislature. In the 1960s, the U.S. Supreme Court overhauled how representation works nationwide. You might know this as the one-person, one-vote principle. It means districts have to be equal in population to each other, so everyone gets equal representation. Since then, Oregon's lawmakers have redrawn the lines every decade after the census. But most of the maps they've come up with have been challenged, meaning either the Secretary of State or the courts have had to step in and take over. The only time it hasn't happened that way in the past 50 years was in 2011. Now, fast forward to 2021. Lawmakers won't even get the census population data until after their constitutional deadline to redraw the lines, which leaves a lot up in the air about who will create the maps this time around. And that's how we got here. Now, I know a lot of you are wondering, what's Portland going to do with all this trash? So we asked the mayor for some specifics about his plan to get rid of the garbage, and he said this.
You know I don't give specific timelines, and you know why.
No, I don't.
Plus, the Oregon GOP lost a good, let's say, 6,000 members last month alone, including this guy, who you might remember is the last Republican to run for governor. Hey, welcome back. I was just reading some of your emails during the break, and a lot of questions about gerrymandering after our piece on redistricting. So we're going to be continuing that coverage. So more on that coming up tomorrow. So just stay with us. Keep messaging me. Use that hashtag HeyDan, or message me on Facebook. Just search Dan Haggerty KGW. Now, we don't just address your feedback right here on the show. Sometimes we actually take it directly to our elected leaders. You've seen that, and you've seen us do that before. And that was actually the case today when our Maggie Vespa talked to Portland's mayor. Now, if you've been watching our show lately, you know that I'm talking about all the trash and graffiti that flat out is making Portland look terrible right now. We put out a call on social media asking for the parts of town that frustrate you the most, and you sent us hundreds of photos and videos and tips. We did our first story on this last week. It's online right now if you'd like to check it out. Now, in it, city departments in charge of cleaning Portland up, they told us that they're working more now than they ever have before, and they're out of money. So Maggie Vespa asked Mayor Wheeler, what's his plan with this problem here? And she started reading him some of your complaints.
And some people wrote things like, it's embarrassing. It's what I would expect if I were to go to a third world country. Portland is an absolute expletive hole. So sad, was once a beautiful city.
Portland's mayor says he gets it.
I completely share the frustration and the disappointment that people throughout the city of Portland are experiencing when they look around and they see litter or they see Graffiti is
so much litter that the city office in charge of cleaning up trash told us last week crews are on track to pick up more this year than they ever have. And it's still not enough. So much graffiti that the city's abatement program has already blown through its budget for the entire fiscal year, which doesn't end until summer. And it's still not enough. Just ask business owners downtown, which we did.
Just dirty. Out of control.
In an interview Tuesday, the mayor noted his office increased funding for those cleanup programs during the last budget cycle.
But let's admit it, that was a down payment on the work that we have yet to do.
Because it's gotten worse. Hundreds of viewers told us so on social media. The mayor says going into the next budget cycle, he'll call on fellow city commissioners to increase funding for these programs. But that budget doesn't go into effect until the summer. In the meantime, he'll look to move funding around to ramp up these programs as soon as possible. We asked for specifics.
So how soon might that? Because that's kind of what I'm getting at. What can be done in the meantime?
You know I don't give specific timelines, and you know why.
No, I don't. Why not? For people who want to know when.
I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I want to make sure that we have a thoughtful program, and we will be completely transparent with the public about both the plans and the resources as they're developed. But I'm not going to sit here and guess.
By spring, I mean, even just a generic going into spring or that kind of thing.
We're going to do immediately what we can do immediately.
Okay, Maggie Vespa joining us now after what I think we can categorize as a non-answer from the mayor there. He essentially didn't want to give you any details. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it was interesting. In that moment, I definitely didn't know what he meant by saying, and you know why. I didn't know why he would refuse to answer that question. So that genuinely was surprising that he was that blunt about it. And keep in mind, this is a guy he's recently made hard demands of other elected leaders, and he's gotten things done. Like a recent example, a couple months before the November election, he told the Joint Office of Homeless Services, hey, get us 300 shelter beds before November or the city is pulling out of that partnership. That was a big deal. And he got his 300 beds, and he was really public about that. So for him to say, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver and then expect that first to be known by me and then just to kind of be the rationale to move forward on, I was surprised by that.
He, of course, is not the only decision maker at City Hall. You did reach out to all of the other commissioners here in Portland. What did you learn from them?
Yeah, I did. The first one to get back was newly elected City Commissioner Mingus Mapps, and he said this issue is really important to him. And then here's just kind of one point from a long statement that he sent me. He wrote in part, the city has an incredible partnership with Central City Concerns Clean Start PDX to remove trash related to urban camping, basically homelessness. Right now, the city is running 8 trucks, and if there's an opportunity to double or triple this number, I would support that. And he also called for the city to do more to partner with groups like Solve, who we profiled here on the story last night. That's a volunteer group that organizes cleanups around Portland and different neighborhoods. So again, that was another point in his statement. And we don't know, to reiterate, if that's part of the mayor's plan, because he wouldn't give specifics today, but we'll definitely keep asking.
I know you will. Maggie Vespa, thank you. Now, let's get back to the elephant in the room and how many are tiptoeing out. According to the Secretary of State, 6,000 Republicans in Oregon left the party in January after pro-Trump rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol. And the Oregon State Party passed a resolution describing that assault as a false flag operation, which it wasn't, something proven by thousands of pieces of evidence. But these Republican departures are not exactly surprising numbers. States across the country have been seeing this same sort of thing happen. The decline actually started in November, if you really want to trace it back, as President Trump repeatedly made statements that the election was, quote, stolen, or that he won in a landslide, claiming the election was rigged against him and his supporters. Without a stitch of evidence, Republicans started leaving the party then. John DM'd us on Twitter and said, "Hey Dan, just changed my voter registration from Republican to Independent. How embarrassing for Republicans in Oregon." Tim DM'd us too and said, "I just switched my political party from Republican to Democrat." So, 6,000 people left the party in 1 month. Is that a big deal? Well, it depends how you look at it. First of all, when a party loses the White House, they often lose people from the party. So that sort of thing is not rare. It actually happens to both parties. Sometimes even both parties will lose people regardless of who wins or who loses after a race like that. So that's not that big of a deal. But in this case, this is the steepest drop Republicans have seen in like 20 years. It's actually twice the steepest drop they've seen in 20 years. And Democrats actually saw a small jump in registered voters. So kind of a big deal. But there are more than 700,000 registered Republicans in Oregon, and losing 6,000 people is less than 1%. So not really that big of a deal. But one of those 6,000 people is Newt Buehler, who in 2018 was kind of a big deal. He ran for governor and lost to Kate Brown. He's best known for his role as an Oregon Republican and for his goatee. But during my interview with him today, only one remains. He told the New York Times he left the Republican Party on the same night officials passed that false flag resolution.
Well, I think there's a lot of Republican office holders that are relieved that there is someone who is speaking out about the nonsense, about the wackiness, about that there should be no place in the Republican Party for conspiracy theorists, that the Republican Party should be people who are focused on solving real problems for people who are suffering mightily in the state of Oregon right now, suffering with unemployment, with the challenges of COVID, with not having their kids in school. Those are the types of things that they want to be talking about.
But you're not.
They're happy that there's someone out front, bringing attention to those issues and not the conspiracy theories.
But you're not in the Republican Party anymore, are you? So you're not really a Republican standing up for those things. You've said, I'm out. I'm an independent now.
Yeah, but I think there's a relief that there is a voice of reason out there that's saying that there are Republicans who believe in solving the big problems, and that all Republicans don't believe in this kind of conspiracy theory that has been peddled recently by the Oregon Republican Party.
So do you consider yourself like a pseudo-Republican still? Are you kind of a Republican at heart?
I don't know what a Republican means anymore.
So, is it a big deal that Buehler is out? Well, that's up for you to decide, of course. A more conservative Republican actually might be happy that he's leaving the party. I asked him why he left the party instead of trying to fix what he thought was wrong with the party, and he said he's already tried that and that he won't be running for office ever again. He's a doctor. He'll be fine. But he did also have some interesting takes on the future of the party in Oregon, and I'll be working on that for tomorrow. Now, we've been talking about a lot on the show about how COVID has been spreading in state prisons, but Lynn wanted us to go a little bit deeper. She wrote in and said, hey, Dan, what is happening more locally in the county jails? Are they also experiencing outbreaks and deaths? What is the rest of the story, Dan? That's a good question, Lynn, and it is timely because just today we learned about an outbreak at Multnomah County's Inverness Jail. 81 people in custody have gotten sick. As OPB first reported today, that's about 15% of the jail population. We asked the county and the sheriff's office what they're doing to try and stop the outbreak, and they told us that they've reduced jail population by 30% for better distancing inside. People who've been exposed are quarantined and being tested every few days. They're working on getting more protective masks, and the jail has stepped up its cleaning. And they say as soon as they have a vaccine to give, they're going to start giving them. But they don't have those yet. So today, we asked Multnomah County's health officer, Jennifer Vines, are we doing enough to protect people in custody?
I think we are. I think, again, behaviors are difficult, as we all know. And so incentivizing and enforcing things like masking and distancing can just be particularly complex in this environment. And so we are always, again, working with the sheriff, his staff, corrections, health, to see what else we need to be doing. Unfortunately, this is a virus that just spreads so easily in this type of setting.
Multnomah County Health told us that no one in custody at the jail has died from COVID-19, and most cases are mild, according to them. We also asked if they plan to reduce the number of people in jail. Basically, they say they're looking at all the options, but with criminal cases, as I'm sure you know, it's complicated. Hey, keep sending in your comments. Use that hashtag HeyDan. I'm going to read a few as we finish this story right after this. All right, so we got an email in from David in Vancouver. Hey, Dan, what will redistricting in the state of Washington look like this year? As we just did a big piece on redistricting in Oregon. So they'll be redrawing the lines, but Washington did not gain another seat in the House. So it's not quite as complicated, but we'll take a look. We'll see what we can figure out for you up there. Also, Dave Hamilton wrote in and said, you do a good show, but you talk so fast. Maggie speaks at just the right speed. I just am old and have trouble keeping up. I don't think that's true, but I do think it's true that I speak too fast. I just get so darn excited, Dave. I can't help myself. I get fired up here, man. I'll do my best to kind of chill out, though, and deliver the news at a normal pace. See you tomorrow.